You are listening to TMBDOS. They must be destroyed on sight. Discussions of an adult nature, adult language, and spoilers for the films discussed are most likely. Still on board? Come on in. Enjoy your stay.
They must be destroyed on sight.
Okay, welcome back to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 119. We have to figure out what we're going to do for 125 if we keep up the tradition of doing something special every 25 episodes or so. That'll be something to figure out. But I'm your host, Lee. You can't prove you're innocent running away, Russell. And I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel. Came a long way to be buried, Harper. How you doing, sir?
I'm not buried yet. So, at least there's that. Yeah, I was gonna make a joke about alcoholic floozies, but why go there this quickly?
Yeah, we'll sort of smoothly transition into it.
That's the best way to really handle the alcoholic floozy is to smoothly transition in.
Yeah, well,
that is the appropriate preposition to the alcoholic nymphomaniac floozy. And I use the term floozy over and over again. I use it with the utmost respect. Yeah.
Well, that seems to be the correct nomenclature of the period, at least. So
yeah. No, yeah. I'm speaking 1950s ease here.
Yeah. So we're doing a special little episode here. We're going to be covering 3 films by a particular actress named Mary Dorothy Maloney, or known as Dorothy Malone, her most famous of her stage names anyway, who just recently died here in 2018 in January at age 93. 10 days shy of 94, actually. So
yeah, very much. Yeah, we kind of fell in love with her when we did our Big Sleep episode, which is one of my favorite ones we've ever done. So definitely go back and check that one out if you didn't listen to that one yet. And we both noticed her, and then in just sort of the cursory research that we do for these, and that's really the kind of research we do for this is cursory. Very much so. I discovered she was still alive and that she had a long career, and said, "Oh, we should one day come back and do some more for films." 2 years later, she dies, and we go, well, geez, maybe this is like the opportunity we have to do the film. So, I kind of just went through her Wikipedia page and picked 3. But I mean, she worked for almost 50 years. Yeah. She was a working actress for almost 50 years, and we'll definitely kind of some other stuff kind of pinged on my radar as we were kind of going through this, or at least we were kind of planning this. So I think we'll definitely kind of veer towards some more Dorothy Malone in the future.
Oh, definitely.
Just kind of giving my own half of this summary here, not to take over the hosting duties, but this was something I've been looking forward to for a while, honestly, because I really hadn't seen anything that she was in, but we both fell in love with her in The Big Sleep, and she literally is on the screen for 2 minutes in that movie.
Yeah, but she does so much with that 2 minutes.
And it was very clear this is someone we really need to kind of revisit, and I think it was a pretty good idea. I think it ended up being very rewarding in a lot of different ways. So
yeah, her role in The Big Sleep, just a small role, is basically a clerk at a bookstore or whatever it was, and just the brief exchanges she has with Humphrey Bogart, including the implied exchanges off screen.
That's barely implied. That's it's pretty overt, and partly it's direction and partly it's writing, but a whole lot of it is just Dorothy Malone being amazing. So
yeah, but that sort of made her a star. She was a contract player of RKO. Then she went to Warner Brothers. That's where she got her big break, basically started really getting big meaty roles after that. And then she slipped into B-movie obscurity for a while before she came back and won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in one of the films we're covering tonight. So so we will get into this, but we do have quite a few comments. We've been away for 2 weeks, so we did get a little bit more comments than usual. So I'll get into them here right now. First one is on one of our YouTube videos. This is Shiftless One. Oh, no, this is actually, I I did due diligence and checked our iTunes, which I really do because I hate iTunes so much.
Fair enough.
But I went and checked it, and we had a new comment, although it's from last year, from December 25th.
Sure. Someone was reviewing us on Christmas?
Yeah. Someone was reviewing us on Christmas.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
For this negative review. I'm sure it's going to be a highly negative review.
It's a 5-star. It's a 5-star review.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. This is from someone called Shiftless One.
Okay.
Seeing this podcast title was borrowed from a classic horror film, I expected the movies reviewed would be limited to the genre and stuck in the post-70s era, but happily found this wasn't the case. The genial hosts cover a variety of films in various genres, ranging from older obscure thrillers like Hangover Square, to westerns like High Noon, to neo-noir like Night Moves, and, of course, horror, both old and new. The discussions are quite literate, interesting, and deep, focusing on thematic elements, characters, and production aspects, rather than just the usual plot rehash, and provide some real on-point observations about the films covered. Very engaging films and film talk.
Yeah. Well, that's about the best review. I mean, we can just quit now, right? Like, we've gotten one iTunes review, and it's the perfect one. Like,
well,
it's done. Thank you, Shiftless One. Yeah, I'm sorry it took us 5 months to notice that. Sorry, it took a week. So that I never would have looked, but so it could have been there for 5 years before I would have even bothered to check. But
hopefully they stayed around. Hopefully they weren't like 2 months later. Where the fuck is my review being shouted out on the podcast? These motherfuckers.
Really, this person only listened to like a handful of episodes and then just wrote the review and then quit. But yes, thank you very much for the review. We do appreciate all of our reviews. We just don't often check that particular site. If you, Shiftless One, are on Facebook, you should come to our Facebook group.
Yeah, they must be destroyed on site on Facebook. He may very well be one of our existing Facebook members under a different name, of course. So if you are Shiftless One, and not just a shiftless one, let us know. Although we enjoy socializing with shiftless people as well, so that's
we're both kind of shiftless ourselves, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah, but that was very cool. So 2 reviews on iTunes, both of them positive, because the first one was from our friend Mike Murphy from a while back. So there you go. Yeah, Mike Murphy's taste is just terrible. But
we're not really going to talk Dorothy Malone today. We're just going to talk Marvel movies. I think that's the new plan, right?
That Black Widow.
It's going to be all Marvel all the time.
Yeah. Our next one is from a longtime listener and acquaintance of yours, more of an acquaintance of yours than mine, but Henry Lampman. And he says, Daniel, or to me and you, actually, why did I copy and paste that? That's the fucking to me and to Daniel in the fucking, fuck it. As
we'll see if that ends up in the episode.
It will. I'm not gonna edit that.
The only thing that's absolutely certain to never be cut out of an episode of a podcast is anything that says, "Oh yeah, we'll cut that out."
Yeah,
that's the stuff that always gets left in.
Yeah. As one of your 4 fans, yes, I enjoyed the discussion of Hackers and Short Circuit, and your lives as young nerds. I saw all 3 films in theaters and haven't seen them since. I've been reluctant to revisit them, but maybe now I will. As much as the other 3 fans want the podcast to get more political, help me out. Or maybe he's saying not more political.
Yeah. I think he's doing a bit of a sarcastic emoji there.
Yeah. Back when I hung up my activist shoes, WikiLeaks was doing wonderful things for liberty and exposure. What changed besides maybe airing some of Clinton's dirty laundry?
I mean, that's a bigger question than necessarily I want to get into in a little 2-minute answer, but I think the big picture is, when Chelsea Manning went to prison for one thing, and I mean, it really kind of looks a lot more like, the real thing that WikiLeaks did was Chelsea Manning fed them their, most important leak, and kind of put them on the map. And Julian Assange was always just sort of the Bond villain-esque guy who, pretended it was all him, right? He kind of got the media exposure. Regardless of how you feel about sort of American politics, et cetera, when you are perceived as, when you're supposed to be the kind of big information, kind of truth teller guy, and then you are perceived as being like kind of heavily biased, towards one side of a, kind of political activist one way or the other, you're necessarily gonna, your reputation's gonna sink. I think if he had been doing the exact same things, but have been doing it in a sort of pro-Clinton and anti-Trump direction, I think he would have been treated exactly the same way, maybe by different people. But, all Julian Assange has to do in order to get my respect would be, 1, face the rape charges he's facing in Sweden. 2, release Donald Trump's tax returns. Find and release Donald Trump's tax returns, and I'm going to consider it all good as far as I'm concerned.
Julian Assange, one of our other 3 listeners, get on that shit.
I'm sure he's one of the people listening. he's the who's the guy, the iTunes review guy.
Shiftless one.
Shiftless one. Julian Assange himself is very shiftless. Again,
so there you go.
You should probably face those rape charges, Julian, if you're listening. And
Art Bell just died. So he was obviously killed. It's all fitting into place right now. The conspiracy is coming together.
Milos Forman just died.
That's right. Yeah.
So in like 3 months, we'll do a Milos Forman episode because that'll be the first time we get around to doing it.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about Art Bell. God, we're never going to actually get to these films, are we? It's going to be great. All right.
Okay. Next comment. Yes. Thank you, Henry, and I hope you comment more. You're too silent.
We always do appreciate your comments. We disagree politically, but we do appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
On our episode, The World, the Flesh, and the Devil on YouTube, someone called Cindy G. This is another one of these. I thought I was getting the movie. Instead, I'm getting a podcast. She writes, wanted the movie, not some guys talking about it. And that was it.
I'm sorry, we did not make The World, the Flesh, and the Devil.
Yeah, I suggested to her that she should try searching better next time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure The World, the Flesh, and the Devil is on YouTube, right?
I think it is, yeah. And I mean, even if it's not, when you search for it and our podcast comes up 10 things down the list, and you look at it, it clearly shows that it's a podcast. It's not the fucking movie. So, yeah. So, Cindy, grow a brain.
The World, the Flesh, and the Devil is quite a good film, and I hope you found it and watched it and enjoyed it.
She probably wouldn't have. She sounds really dumb. Another YouTube comment. This is on our Bad Day at Blackrock episode. Someone called Rosie Farrell. He actually had a stream of comments, so he was commenting as he was listening to the podcast, basically.
Okay.
So he starts off positive. He's like, "This is a great movie."
Okay.
Yeah,
I love he starts off positive. This is the moment where you open the beer. Okay, we're done. Yeah. All right, let's go.
This is a great movie. Spencer Tracy, Robert Ryan, Ernest Borgnine, and Lee Marvin were excellent. Then he says Marvin was far cooler than Clint, which I'd probably say he is. Yeah.
I mean, cooler? Yeah, I mean, certainly. If Clint Eastwood had died in like 1980, I think we would consider that. A lot of the Clint Eastwood baggage is sort of later material,
Yeah.
Or after Unforgiven. I mean, it's sort of,
He says the town was terrified. Tracy's unfazed. I think he was kind of questioning our why are the townspeople all being dicks, kind of thing. Then he says, and I can't remember if I mentioned that all 3 of these people were in the Dirty Dozen or not, or if I just mentioned 2. But he says the Dirty Dozen had all 3, Marvin, Borgnine, and Ryan. Then he asks, are you guys real movie fans?
Well, you're listening to something like episode 105 of a podcast about movies, so I would think so. But,
Then he says, know your people. And then he finishes off by saying cursing is not equal to commentary.
Okay. Well, fuck you.
Yeah, that's what I told him in the YouTube comments. Fuck you.
Cursing is orthogonal to commentary. I think that's I don't know. I haven't gone back to listen to that one, but you can't please everybody.
No, and I don't want to, especially not fucking dicks like Rosie Farrell. So fuck you, Rosie. Then we have a couple comments on our Facebook page. First, my friend Erie Eric, after I posted a picture of Dorothy Malone, he writes, holy shit, that woman is drop dead gorgeous. That neck, Those ears, those cheekbones, those glasses, those eyebrows, that bottom lip, those teeth, that jawline, that suckable nose. Yeah. So
this was our response after seeing The Big Sleep as well.
Yeah.
And why this episode is existing. Because I believe the photo you posted is a still from The Big Sleep. If I'm
yes, it is.
So, yeah. So that's pretty much all the commentary I was going to do on these films. So, we can just kind of close up early then.
We're done. See you guys in episode 120. And then finally, Jeff Williams says, "Oh man, she was in so many underrated films like Warlock, The Last Sunset, The Last Voyage, and Private Hell 36. These sound like all titles that we have to.
Well, I mean, I will do a lot of Dorothy Malone films based on what we've seen so far. So yeah, let's throw them all on there. We'll do them eventually.
Yeah.
Bad movies. The world is full of them. From low-budget crap fests to downright unwatchable. And only 2 men are willing to watch them all. So climb in and take your seat. This is Short Bus Cinema.
Let's do it.
Hey everyone, this is Johnny Krug from Kruger Nation.
And this is Rick Morgan from the Helming Power Hour.
And we have decided to team up and take you where no one has gone before.
We're on a quest to find the world's worst movie, and we're doing it on the bus.
Driving through cult classics in every genre to find the holy grail of bad movies.
So if you're looking for something different and more fun than you can stand, then climb on in.
Short Bus Cinema is a proud member of Legion Podcasts.
That's right, yo!
Short Bus Cinema. We love to watch the movies you hate.
Looking for something different in your podcast library? Then why not check out the podcast Under the Stairs? I'm the host Duncan McLeish, and joining me each week will be a special guest as we examine some classic, old school horror favourites, as well as some modern classics. That's not to say that we don't tackle some of the, let's say, more questionable entries into the horror genre. And if all that wasn't enough, we have a subset of shows called Baz v Horror, where our horror novice, the Baz, tackles horror in all shapes and forms to see who will come out victorious. So what are you waiting for? The show can be found at podcastunderthestairs.wordpress.com and on Stitcher and iTunes. The Podcast Under the Stairs is a proud member of Legion Podcast Network. This is Duncan McLeish from Under the Stairs, signing off.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
doll popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was going to be a rough.
How did you watch this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
And now to present the award for the Best Actress in a supporting role, Mr. Jack Lemmon, ladies and gentlemen. Jack, it certainly is wonderful to see you, and I would like to take this opportunity to tell you that I am one of your greatest admirers.
Well, Jerry, gee, I don't know what to say.
Just read the teleprompter like everybody else. It's easy.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. The nominees for the award for Best Actress in a Supporting Role. Nominees for the award Best Actress in a Supporting Role are Mildred Dunnick in Baby Doll, Eileen Heckert in The Bad Seed, Mercedes McCambridge in Giant, Patty McCormick in The Bad Seed, and Dorothy Malone in Written on the Wind. The envelope, please. Dorothy Malone in Written on the Wind.
Thank you all so much. I'd like to, I don't know how much time we have, but I'd like to accept this award in the name of my late little brother, Bill. And I'd like to thank especially the Academy, because I'm sure that this year, the 4 other girls, such stiff competition, it was I really appreciate it. And I know I haven't got time to thank such loyal friends as Edna Benoit and my producer, Mr. Zug Smith, and Universal, and all its board of directors who've had such confidence in me, like Mr. Mull. And I want to thank the Screen Extras Guild and the Screen Actors Guild, because we've had a lot of ups and downs together, and you understand all the crews I've worked with. Thank you so much, and God love you all.
All right, so we're going to start off first, and this is Dorothy Malone's sort of foray into being an independent, no longer under contract by one of the big studios, and this is The Fast and the Furious from 1955. Directed by John Ireland and Edward Sampson, written by Roger Corman, Gene Howell, and Jerome Oldham. It is starring John Ireland as Frank Webster, Dorothy Malone as Connie Adair, Bruce Carlyle as Faber, Iris Adrian as Wilma Bedling, Marshall Bradford as Mr. Hillman, Bruno Visotto as Bob Nielsen, and Bird Holland as Doctor. I have a lot more on here. Oh, actually, I should say this one. Larry Thor as Detective Sergeant. I like that. but
that's like Major from Catch-22 is Detective Sergeant.
But yeah, like honestly, as we get into this, you'll quickly discover that none of these people really matter, other than the first 2 people. But
there are like 3 people in this entire plot that matter.
Yeah. The synopsis for this: a trucker framed for murder breaks into jail, takes a young woman hostage, and enters her sports car in a cross-border road race, hoping to get to Mexico before the police catch him.
That's the plot. I mean,
it sounds like even more plot than what you actually see on screen, really.
Yeah, no. If anything, there's less plot in the actual film. It really does kind of rely on basically just the leads being charming and kind of doing what they're doing. Yeah, I guess I'll start here. If you've seen The Chase, the 1994 Charlie Sheen, Christy Swanson vehicle, which I haven't seen in almost 20 years now, I remember liking it. It's got some sort of surreal elements to it. I think, kind of watching this made me think, we should probably kind of check that out again. Let's do a Charlie Sheen episode, and that's going to be a disaster. But anyway, if you've seen The Chase, this is a pretty similar plot, just without the sort of media satire stuff, and without quite the, like, they're literally just driving for, an hour and a half. And, it kind of, each film kind of has its credit either way, because I think The Chase kind of makes it work as this surreal kind of thing. This is much more low budget, and it just kind of becomes a sort of a man on the lam, and he kidnaps Dorothy Malone's character, almost by chance, and then they start this kind of budding relationship, and there are a couple of car chases, and then the movie's over. There's not much here. Probably the most interesting thing is just the kind of basic setup of the thing. The whole reason that nobody can find the trucker, this kind of the guy played by John Ireland. John Ireland both stars in this and directed in it, which is a very low budget film kind of thing of this era. Just we gotta think this is Roger Corman. But probably the most interesting thing is that, this guy kind of comes in and he says, oh, a jalopy. And he's saying sarcastically that this very nice Jaguar that Dorothy Malone is driving is a jalopy. But the woman at the diner who kind of ends up witnessing the sort of kerfuffle, and then they kind of run off, and she talks to the police, and so she says, oh, they were driving a jalopy, and therefore they're looking for a really shitty car, and so nobody kind of realizes that it was sarcastic. And I mean, it's kind of a nifty little bit of plotting, because it just sort of explains how they're able to kind of get through the police checkpoints in the way that they are, and kind of I don't know, it sort of justifies itself in a way that's more clever than it had to be, and I sort of respect the film for that. Other than that, I mean, there's really no story at all here, except they just kind of drive around a lot and make eyes at each other.
When you go into this, you've probably already known about the Fast and the Furious franchise, the modern one,
right? Yeah.
Where this has no real connection to it, because that franchise basically just bought the name, the rights to the name, not the rights to the actual story, because they figured, well, we don't want Roger Corman to sue us, so we'll buy the rights to the name for what I read was stock footage, rights to use stock footage, which is a very Corman thing. And I'm sure there was also a pile of money involved somewhere as well, because that's also a very Roger Corman thing. But yeah, this is kind of like, you kind of figure Fast and the Furious, 1955, it's got to be a teenagers driving stock cars around the road and going crazy. Not at all. It's
that's Grand Theft Auto. That's a few years down the line. This is literally just we got two actors in in a car, and they just kind of walk around and do stuff.
Yeah, this is.
I mean, it's supposedly sort of a crime film. It's supposedly kind of a thriller, but
it's kind of a noir plot.
Yeah,
but I mean, it doesn't really have a plot at the same time.
Right. This is, I mean, we're starting with this one. This is, I think, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but this is the least of the three we're going to cover.
Oh yeah, it totally is,
for sure. I did watch this a couple of weeks ago when we were first planning on doing it, and then I rewatched it this afternoon, and I mean, it's I kind of had a hard time really paying that close of attention to it.
Yeah.
Even as sort of like just kind of casually rewatching it. Dorothy Malone is really good in it. I think the actors are really good. I mean, I think even the kind of the bit parts, I don't think that they're, I think it works on that level. It's got some pretty good production value, for what it is. I mean, the version that's on YouTube, I think it is in the public domain. So the version on YouTube is like really shitty quality.
Like shit.
It does look like shit, especially in certain sequences where it just is very clear that like this could use a touch up from a restoration team if we're going to actually try to watch this. But it's really painless, at least. I mean, it doesn't. It's not like actively hurtful, and I do like the performance, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense as to why. I mean, she just kind of falls in love with this guy.
Yeah, it's just like Stockholm syndrome without any real reason,
without any kind of real justification for it, and without any real kind of characterization. Like she just sort of believes him when he says, "Oh, I'm innocent." And I was like, "Oh, you're innocent." Well, let's.
But before that even, but before that even, it's like, everyone's just so kind of badly written in this. It's like she does her best, and like she's snappy with the dialogue, and she makes it interesting, but some scenes she's really cold on him, and then she moves to hot, like she goes back and forth, like, oh, I'm into him, I believe him, and then the next scene it's like they're both at each other's throats again, so it doesn't really make any sense. And then you just get a lot of filler footage. There's a bunch of stock footage here. There's actual stunt stuff that was done. Corman, this isn't his official first directing credit, but he did do like some second unit stuff on this, and even drove one of the cars for some of the stunt work.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But I
don't know. There's just not much here. It's just kind of like it's worth a bit. I mean, it's Corman, it's Roger Corman. So if you're a completist, it's one of the films he produced. It's also, I believe, the very first film produced for the American International Pictures Company. So you can see some of the origins of where the kind of the exploitation genre is going to go in 10 or 15 or 20 or 25 years. You can kind of see and sort of embedded here the same sorts of ideas, but ultimately it's a low budget flick. If it wasn't Roger Corman directing it or producing it, then we probably would just kind of forget it entirely. Dorothy Malone does what she can. I do like that she's the kind of race car driver. Like, that she's not like borrowing the car or something like that. I mean, there is this sort of like proto-feminist angle. I think the thing that I'm learning about Dorothy Malone, just from kind of reading about her and kind of watching these films. Even when she was kind of just doing whatever she could get for hire, she tended to pick good parts. And despite that this is the most stereotypical role of the three we're going to look at, and the least of the films, I think it's still nice that there is a little bit of a, she's more clever than she has to be. She's not just sort of damsel in distress, which Marilyn Monroe often was in films of this kind of era. So.
Yeah, no, she comes off way better than anybody else in the film. So
I mean, she's the only one really that's like memorable. I mean, even John Ireland was like directing himself and still comes across as kind of like a generic dude.
Yeah, maybe the asshole at the diner at the beginning. You kind of remember that guy, who's the guy who gets knocked out, and you have to like rely on him finally waking up from his coma or wherever the fuck to finally give some information.
The only other person would be the woman behind the diner, and just because she can't she can't find the pineapple juice, and she gets the jalopy thing wrong. But yeah, no, it's a decent little whatever, but it's not really worth kind of. I don't know. It's an hour and 12 minutes long or something like that on YouTube. And you could play that at like 1.5 speed and you'd be fine. Like you'd get what's going on there.
Yeah, but I mean, it did really well though. Budget was $50,000 and it made $250,000 box office. So
I'm sure they played it at it was just sort of one of those drive-in kind of cheapies, and it played as a B picture, and made money back. Sure, great, and launched the career. I mean, launched Roger Corman's career. So
this really did sort of take off for him, and helped get him his first directing job, which we'll move into right now, I guess.
I've got nothing more to say. I'm done.
Five Guns West from 1955 as well. Directed by Roger Corman, written by R. Wright Campbell. This is starring John Lund as Governor Sturgis, Dorothy Malone as Shaylee Jethro, Mike Connors as Hale Clinton, R. Wright Campbell as John Candy, no relation, and Jonathan Blaze as Billy Candy, no relation, Paul Birch as J.C. Haggard, and James Stone as Uncle Mike, Jack Ingram as Stephen Jethro, and Larry Thor as Confederate captain. And the synopsis for this: during the Civil War, 5 condemned Southern prisoners are plucked off death row and promised pardons on the condition that they undertake a mission to head west and bring back a double-crossing Confederate spy who has a stagecoach full of Confederate gold. It sort of...
It does. I mean, there's a lot that I have issues with. We're reading this off of the Wikipedia page, and I watched this afternoon, and there's a lot of stuff that is not really accurate on this Wikipedia page.
No, but again, what's your sort of initial?
I'm not even sure her last name is Jethro, because Jethro is the last name of the guy who's like the Confederate traitor, or the guy who the traitor to the Confederate.
Yeah,
so the guy. So I think whoever wrote this plot summary didn't know what the fuck they were talking about.
Yeah, it could be.
Because I got that. I mean, I read the plot summary, and then I was kind of expecting a twist that never came. And in fact, you get a different twist. So I probably had a different experience of this film than I was really intended to have, because I kept expecting like, oh no, it turns out I was the Confederate War deserter all along or whatever. But yeah, this film was really good. I think it's a little bit slow to start. I think that the first 30 minutes or so might play better now, having seen the film and kind of gotten a little bit more of where it's going, to kind of at first the 5 men who were supposed to be able to kind of tell apart pretty quickly. I mean, it spends some time trying to give us a little bit of backstory on them, at the very beginning, just as they're kind of being read their pardons. But I found it really difficult to kind of differentiate them at first. I think, it's kind of like, let's just kind of get into the movie and kind of tell me this without just literally reading it out to me. And I think now that I've seen the film, I can kind of go back and maybe kind of reprocess that and kind of go, oh, okay, now I know what you were trying to tell me all along. And then the final third kind of becomes a little bit of a kind of a low budget action thing, which is it's got some pretty clever stuff in it. It's got some stuff in it I quite like. Particularly there's a sequence involving some floorboards and a crawl space that I think is actually really much more clever than a film like this would typically be. But it does kind of feel a little bit like, oh, it's low budget Western, kind of like TV Western kind of production value. And but the middle of this film is actually really interesting, and that's the part that Dorothy Malone is in most prominently. She is absolutely the best thing in this film, and I think this is a film that basically works from beginning to end. It's amazing that this is made in 1955 because this is, I mean, it feels like it's pointing pretty directly towards a revisionist Western kind of aesthetic.
This is a proto Dirty Dozen.
Yeah, it's a proto Peckinpah, proto Morricone. I mean, or a Leone. I mean, you could put a Morricone score under this, and lengthen some of the shots, like just re-edit it slightly, and you could tell me, oh, this was a low budget spaghetti western, and and I'd believe you. I mean, it works that well. It's not to the level of like a Leone or like The Great Silence or something like that. It's not that good, but it definitely is. It would fit pretty handily into that subgenre. I really like some of the character work here. I mean, again, particularly Dorothy Malone. I love that she's clever. I love that the kind of the card sharp guy, he kind of comes up and he's trying to literally charm her pants off. Yeah. And, she literally kind of gets away from him and closes the door and goes, he thinks he's charming. And I just, I kind of love that. I love that she's trying to get information out of these guys. There's the really dumb guy who's also the writer of the film, which I think is just it's the same actor. The actor who plays that is also the writer of the film.
He knew what he was doing. Yeah,
he knew what he was doing. But I love that he just starts giving her all the information she wants, and and she acts, oh no, I'm just here for some tobacco. It's and you could tell in her performance. I mean, it really is. I mean, it seems like damning with faint praise, but you could see in her performance, she's just tricking this guy. And on the page, I can't imagine that it works nearly as well as kind of her performance is able to kind of breathe into that.
Yeah,
I can see. I mean, because there's a review of this, just on the kind of again on the Wikipedia page. DVD Savant found this movie is less interesting for its quality than its place in the development of independent production. TV Guide gave the movie 2 out of 5 stars, finding it similar to other westerns of the time. I disagree with that entirely. I mean, if you're just watching this on TV, and kind of didn't pay any attention to it, it's like, well, it just kind of looks like a low budget Western. I mean, I get that, but there's so much more going on in this than in a lot of other stuff that's made around this time.
There's more stuff going on in the scripts, and it's also a bit grittier than stuff you would find at this time, like 1955. Not a lot of Westerns with stabbings and with people being shot on screen within that shot. Like, when you talk about spaghetti Westerns, a lot of historians make a point that spaghetti Westerns were much more instrumental in showing, like, hey, this guy's getting shot, and you actually see him getting shot within that shot on the film, Right. Like, instead of, there's a close-up of someone shooting, and then it cuts to the guy falling over,
Yeah, there's even a long shot, like a kind of a deep focus take where, there's this guy riding off on a horse, and, basically somebody like picks up a rifle and aims and fires, and then he falls off the horse, kind of down the line. Again, for the kind of super low budget $60,000 production, it's a really interesting shot. Some of the action doesn't work at all. Like there's a final shootout at the end where a guy pulls the trigger and then it takes about a second for the guy to respond. And then there's a fist fight in the dirt that's pretty obviously a couple of actors who had like one take to pretend to fall over.
Some of the physical struggles in this make the fist fights in spaghetti westerns look good, incredible.
Yeah. No, it definitely kind of lost me a little bit there in terms of the sort of the standard pleasures of the western are supposed to be in the sort of the gunfights and the fist fights and that sort of thing, and this actually it falls down on that regard. I mean, ironically, this right there in the final 10 minutes, basically, it kind of has those two moments that just completely take me out of the film in terms of just sort of buying the reality that it's actually done a pretty good job of establishing to that point. And I also think that once Dorothy Malone kind of becomes the kind of more generic Western supporting role, kind of the
once they once they get into the siege aspect of the final part of the film, because the middle part of the film is kind of, let's all try to rape the blonde girl. That's like that's kind of like the middle part of the film to a certain degree.
And there's a pretty intense little rape moment there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a sequence that reminded me. I mean, honestly, this film reminded me of Once Upon a Time in the West during that sort of sequence. I mean, again, it's not nearly as well done as that sequence is. It's not nearly as sort of focused on character, but certainly, I mean, basically, this guy's coming on to her. He's like, just give me a kiss, just give me a kiss.
Yeah.
And then, like, he starts forcing his way onto her. And, I mean, it's legitimately threatening. Mm-hmm. And she's like, okay, I'll do whatever you want. I mean, she's literally, like, acquiescing just to, to keep her life, basically. And it's actually a fairly, I mean, you can see that there's this isn't really a Western. It's really more of a thriller, almost horror kind of film in moments like that. And then, again, you mentioned the knife sequence at the end. I mean, there's like a slow stabbing at the very end of this film that definitely felt like a lot more hardcore than I was expecting for a Western made in 1955. It feels much more kind of modernistic in that way. I mean, and that's kind of the term, that's the adjective I'd use for Five Guns West, is it feels much more modern than I was expecting in a film like this.
And this is, and for Corman's first take in the director's chair, really well done, really well put together. Like, he did a lot of films after this that looked like shit compared to this.
Oh, no, this is, there are at least kind of two fades that are actually, I mean, legitimately well done. There's one where you do a time cut, and there's a scene that happens where on Dorothy Malone's face, then the camera pans over to a lamp, without a cut between those things, and then we fade into later on with the lamp lit, which is a simple shot, but again, low budget in this kind of era, and without a cut there. So that was definitely like assembled in, I mean, it was assembled ahead of time, which is one of those things that is a stylistic choice that you don't often see in films like this, with this kind of budget. Yeah. And then later on, there's one where there's a dead guy, and then you're literally like, you fade to like dirt on his face, and in a really interesting kind of match cut there. So there are two like really strong visual moments that, again, just describing them don't sound like much, but it is much more sophisticated than you get from a lot of other films like this.
Yeah, I mean, I bet Corman had some good prep time on this, because throughout his career, I wouldn't say Corman's a great director, but one of his biggest strengths is that he really was a proponent of prepping films.
Yeah.
Sometimes he just dolly out really cheap films that didn't have a lot of prep time, but here it just feels like he had everything.
Well, if you have no money, like if you have no money and you're doing everything yourself, you've got to prep ahead of time. It's when you can throw $100 million at something that you could just sort of like throw money at the screen and then just figure it out later, because you can always just go and reshoot something. Low budget filmmaking, I mean, the whole thing is like, you've got 9 days, you've got this script, you've got to shoot it, you've got no money, you've got, you have to plan ahead of time. And that's just sort of, I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. I mean, and that's what's so great about low budget filmmaking. In a lot of ways, and it really kind of cuts the wheat from the chaff in terms of people who can really make a real film and people who just sort of, just throw money at problems.
Yeah. I will mention that one thing that takes me out of this a little bit, like from right at the start. Afterwards, I was all right with it, but nobody in that group of Confederate guys sound like they're from the South at all. Like, nobody in that. Nobody in this film.
I was kind of assuming that we were out west somewhere. I mean, do they ever like tell us where we're supposed to be?
Well, I mean, it's supposed to be no, it's not out west, because they go west on their mission.
Right,
so
I was like kind of assuming it's like Texas or something, where it's not like Mississippi or Louisiana or whatever. It's where kind of, because Texas was under Confederate control at that point. So
So that's probably more my bias than anything, where when I think Confederate soldier, I think Mississippi, Louisiana, shit like that.
Sure, no, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I'm just kind of going like, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of giving the film just a little bit more credit than it probably deserves.
Because the group has that one guy who's the older guy who's sort of got the Walter Brennan sort of squeaky old coal miner, gold miner thing going on. But yeah, okay, whatever. But and also
he's practically going tarnation.
Pretty much. God darn it. But also the one Indian you see in the film, fake Indian.
Well, well, there's always that, and of course, like the whole narrative, the Indian savages, et cetera, they're out to get us. They're just gonna, the first 20 minutes of the film is very much like, we have to be quiet or else these, the savages will kill us, sort of thing. But again, that's so just kind of par for the course. I mean, obviously it's disgusting, but that's just what these films did around this time. So it's kind of, of course, there's the rape sequence in it, and of course, this definitely goes on the deep ambivalence about how people felt about the Confederacy and pop culture in the 50s. There really is this. And that isn't really to be laid on this film necessarily, because I think it does just have sort of this, like, it really isn't examining that at all, and it isn't really kind of questioning that. It doesn't. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah,
I'm sorry, but it doesn't tackle that. It's like these guys are they're in a situation where they basically have to work for the Confederate side. It's not like they're Confederate soldiers. It's not like they're all running around flying the Confederate flag or anything. It's just like they are the Dirty Dozen before the Dirty Dozen kind of thing.
Right. The one thing is, and again, spoiler. I hope people will actually see this film.
I do too.
It sounds it's weird to say, but this could be on my top 10 this year.
I wouldn't.
I'm not saying it's definitely not on my top 10. Let's put it that way. So, I'm just going to put that out there before, because I'm going to spoil. There is a kind of a third act twist, really, kind of last 15 minutes. You find out that the one of the five who we were told is kind of one of the criminals is actually a kind of a guy who's in the Confederate Army, he ends up kind of becoming our hero at the end. We do kind of get that. There are a couple of dialogue sequences between him and Dorothy Malone's character, where he sort of implies like, well, we just have to kind of fight this till the end because, it's sort of the thing. It's just sort of the thing that war does, which, all right, I'm kind of with you. But it also, does kind of, portray him as, the kind of the wounded hero, this sort of, man of some dignity who's just kind of like,
because at the end, he looks at all the people they buried, and half of them are Union soldiers.
Right.
And he actually gives them praise. These guys died with honor. They fought for their cause or whatever. And, these psychopaths over here that we killed, fuck them.
Right. Yeah, no. So there is I think we were at this point in terms of culture at that point. In 1955, there were still a handful of like sort of people who remembered the Civil War still alive.
Right.
Very, very old men. I remember there was like an episode of Dennis the Menace from like 1955 or whatever, where it was like, the very last Confederate veteran of the town was dying or something like that. And when you think about like it, it really wasn't that long ago. And I think at that point there was just sort of sense of whatever side you fought on, it was a terrible war, and doesn't it suck, and was sort of, there was valor on both sides sort of thing. And I think even from a kind of modern view, a more even with these sort of politicized kind of angles on that, people can fight valorously for a terrible cause, and so I think we can kind of accept that, and also just sort of also go, and also slavery was an atrocity,
there are obvious shades of gray.
Almost shades of blue and gray, if you
and gray. A series I really like on still on Netflix right now, Hell on Wheels. That has characters who are Confederates who are not necessarily, they weren't pro-slavery or whatever. There was more to it than that, but still at the same time, it's in this sort of modern context, it's you might have not been pro-slavery, but fuck these guys.
You got to keep in mind that at this point when this film was made, Gone with the Wind was the highest grossing film of all time.
Yeah.
And it was like continually being re-released for reissues. And that has like obvious sort of political implications for, what kind of message that people were getting. Watching this made me think, and more so just sort of not necessarily in sort of direct ways because of the film, but it definitely made me think a kind of study of the way that the Confederacy was treated through cinema, through popular culture from like the beginning 1896 up until like 1975 would be a really interesting kind of study. And this would definitely be kind of one of those. I don't know. It definitely has an ambivalent kind of view of it. I mean, it really is just sort of they're Confederates. There's no reason they had to be Confederates. They could be Union soldiers. Yeah, they could. It could be. Oh yeah, we're
there were plenty of German soldiers who weren't part of the Nazi party.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Anyway.
Yeah, but we should go too deep.
The film was really good.
Yeah.
Dorothy Malone was really good. I would recommend you watch this. The version that's on YouTube seems to lack a opening and closing credits.
Well, there's a couple versions on that. There's a couple of them that try to skirt the getting caught by the YouTube copyright thing, where they're like 2 hours long, where they'll go halfway through the thing and then it'll start the movie over again at a certain point and shit like that. Okay. So that's kind of a common thing that's done on YouTube these days.
Yeah, I saw kind of a couple of different versions and just sort of like, oh well, I'll just pick this one and I'm sure it's fine. So it would be nice to get an actual good version of this. This is one where I think there are some sections of this that just look like shit. Not quite as bad, or not nearly as bad as Fast and the Furious did. But there are some low light sequences that really could use a touch up. I'd love to see a nice restoration of this at some point. Probably when Corman dies, they'll do a big box set.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing: Fast and the Furious and Five Guns West. So there's multiple versions on YouTube. I think there's a couple versions on Daily Motion as well if you search deep enough. Internet Archive has Fast and the Furious, but it's an even shittier version than the YouTube version. But both of these are on Amazon Video, apparently.
Oh, nice. I didn't even check that.
That doesn't necessarily mean the quality's good, but
no, it does not at all.
But the Fast and the Furious, I know, does have some decent DVD releases, and if they stole a print from there, it's probably good. I think Fast and Furious is probably public domain anyway, so I think it's on a lot of those movie packs.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Fast and Furious is. I don't think Five Guns West is public domain, but
no, that's actually a film that's a little bit better than like a B grade. Thing.
It's not the Z grade piece of crap, whatever. And it's Roger Corman's first directorial debut, which I'm sure kind of helped to kind of keep it alive in terms of rights and that sort of thing. Roger Corman paid a lot more attention to this one than maybe he did to
Fast and Furious.
Furious, right?
Like Fast and Furious no one would have heard of that film if it wasn't for the fact that someone wanted to buy the rights to the name and make a series of movies.
Right. I found it again just on Dorothy Malone's Wikipedia page, just kind of looking at. I said, like, behind the curtain here before we kind of get onto Written on the Wind, which I'm not trying to extend the episode, but my whole thing was, I just picked some stuff that would be interesting, and I kind of realized like Dorothy Malone was in the very first film that Roger Corman directed. Well, clearly we have to cover that anyway, and the fact that she's in it and also excellent in it, which we found out means we need to cover that one. And then also, this like the Fast and the Furious, she's in and I thought it was going to be kind of a teenage drive, driving cars movie. So I'm like, well, that'll be fun, and so it was a very easy, like, well, she's in these like very early American International Pictures films, I mean, really, we could have presented these to Mike Murphy. I bet he would have covered these on BB&BC, of course, not really any boobs in either of these.
No,
low body counts, but you could definitely see this being like kind of important even in that kind of genre. So that was really why I picked these two. But I mean, it looks like she has such a long career. We could have done like anything. It's so,
we've got a lot of stuff to come back to. That's definitely sure. Okay, so we'll move on now to Written in the Wind from 1956.
I'll have you. Marriage or no marriage?
I'm in love with you. So much so that I want to marry you.
Universal International presents Rock Hudson as Mitch Wayne, who owed everything to the oil-rich Hadleys. Lauren Bacall, who had married Kyle Hadley too soon. Robert Stack as headstrong Kyle Hadley. Dorothy Malone as Kyle's sister. In a tense, frank drama woven of the raw realism of life itself.
I didn't take her to the motel. She took me. Your daughter's a tramp, mister. If that ain't plain enough for you, I can put it...
As long as he could remember, Mitch, the outsider, the friend, had lent his strength to the Hadleys. To Kyle, too rich, too charming, tortured by a secret that made him lash out at all he loved. To Mary Lee, tormented by longings too strong to control.
I can think of much better things than making smart talk.
To Lucy, whom Mitch loved in silence because she was Kyle's wife.
I respect my marriage.
Haven't I? Can she have children?
There's nothing wrong with Lucy.
You've never cared about me.
Or your wife.
And why are you putting your 2 cents in?
Only because of Mitch. Because I've never had him. And your wife has. Take me away, Mitch. Take me out of this house. Kyle, I went to see Dr. Cochran this morning. We're going to have a baby.
You shouldn't have done that to me.
You, Mitch, and your little...
How's that nothing to do with Mitch?
You dirty...
Get out before I kill you!
Directed by Douglas Sirk, written by George Zuckerman and Robert Wilder, and is starring Rock Hudson as Mitch Wayne, Lauren Bacall as Lucy Moore Hadley, Robert Stack of Unsolved Mysteries fame and The Untouchables. The only 2 things I know him from.
Yeah. That's all, and now this. That's it. You know.
Yeah, and as Kyle Hadley, Dorothy Malone as Mary Lee Hadley, Robert Keith as Jasper Hadley, Grant Williams as Biff Miley, Edward Platt, the chief from Get Smart, as Dr. Paul Cochran.
I knew him from somewhere.
Yeah.
They couldn't place him. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, Robert J. Wilk as Dan Willis, Harry Shannon as Hoke Wayne, and John Larch as Roy Carter. And the synopsis for this is: alcoholic playboy Kyle Hadley marries the woman secretly loved by his poor but hardworking best friend, who in turn is pursued by Kyle's nymphomaniac sister. And yeah, that kind of the very bare bones of this.
Yeah. I mean, the plot is very soap opera.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of look at the this kind of inspires things like Dallas and Dynasty and stuff later on, particularly Dallas.
Can I start on this one? Because
please go ahead.
I really enjoyed this.
I just want to read the this was the bit that told me Dorothy Malone won the Oscar for this. So
yeah,
it's kind of like that's an easy choice. If you look at the Wikipedia plot summary, the first line is self-destructive alcoholic nymphomaniac Mary Lee Dorothy Malone. ... That sold me right there.
Yeah,
I'm like, well, yes, this is a film we need to see. And Douglas Sirk directed it. We've never done a Douglas Sirk film. So, yes, please tell me what you think of the film.
Oh my God, I love this. And this is usually not the kind of thing I'd watch, but
I was really hoping you would enjoy it, because once I started watching it, I was kind of on the, I don't know if Lee's going to really get into this. So, yeah, please tell me what you think of it.
So I watched this cold. I didn't do any research on it or anything like that. After I did the research, a lot of my research actually confirmed what I was thinking about this. As soon as I started watching this, I was like, this film's a fucking parody. Like, it's straight up a parody of 1950s melodramas. Everything here is over the top. It's in Technicolor. It's in the most garish fucking Technicolor you could fucking hope for, where every color just pops out in the fucking screen. Everybody's performance is heightened and big. And yet at the same time, the actors are so fucking good that you buy into the performances, because it's just that well done. I don't think I've ever seen a confirmation of this. Like, I've seen some people kind of think this, but this feels like this movie must have had a big influence on David Lynch, just the way he presents a lot of his films, like Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive.
I mean, I think I mentioned, actually, I could probably look at the plot summary I wrote for Blue Velvet. I'm pretty sure I mentioned Douglas Sirk in the even.
You might have, yeah.
Yeah, and that was my first kind of time watching that. It's a very people today might not know Douglas Sirk very well. I mean, I'm not like super familiar. I haven't seen a whole lot of his stuff.
Well, he got out of Germany, like he escaped Hitler's regime. Right?
He escaped. So Douglas Sirk was not Jewish. But his second wife was Jewish, and he was working in Germany, and he escaped in either 37 or 38. The sources I read varied on that. But he came to the U.S., and then he kind of had a decade of not. He was just kind of trying to make it in Hollywood, and then eventually sort of made it doing these sort of Technicolor dramas that were fairly successful, but really didn't get a ton of. Despite the fact that this kind of got Oscar nominations and stuff, and it won. Dorothy Malone won hers for this. I think he was not really taken seriously because he made films about quote unquote women's issues that were kind of about like sort of emotional relationships and family dramas and that sort of thing. People kind of saw it as being like, this is over the top. I mean, the thing is, this is camp, but it's not camp in a way that's sort of a. It's like if you saw A Streetcar Named Desire and then you said, well, let's do the sort of the big version of this. you know, let's take this even more seriously, just kind of, and then play everything in this kind of flat tone. I don't know quite how much for me the sort of satire of it played. I'm glad it played for you. Yeah. I think for me, I'm enough divorced from the kinds of sort of the way that he's coding that in terms of the Technicolors and that sort of thing. I just kind of read it as, it's Technicolor, and they just put a bunch of colors on screen because that's what they were doing. So I process it more on an intellectual level as a satire than on the sort of direct,
I think it works on both those levels. Like immediately as I start watching this, just the visuals immediately made me think David Lynch. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is Blue Velvet. Like this is Blue Velvet.
I guarantee you David Lynch saw this film. There's no way David Lynch did not see this film before he made Blue Velvet.
But yeah, then it gets into it, and it's like totally fucking just fucking on these melodramas about rich white people that you saw throughout the 50s, right? Like it is totally kind of deconstructing them in a certain way and making fun of them. And yet at the same time, the performances are so goddamn good, and they're so believable.
Everybody's broad, and I think that I think it only falls apart in a couple of places where it really needs to kind of hang together, and that's almost entirely on Robert Stack. And I think that that's not, particularly kind of towards the end, as he's really asked to sort of carry the film's emotional heft, and he's kind of doing the like super alcoholic thing, and part of that is just the way that alcoholism was portrayed in films in the 50s. I mean, if you watch like Man with the Golden Arm, for instance, or, kind of drug addiction or whatever, if you watch Man with the Golden Arm, I mean, that just looks ridiculous today, rolling around and, oh my God, I need the needle. It doesn't.
The way Robert Stack drinks, there's no way he could do half the shit he's doing.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this is that era of, all the actors are drinking brown water constantly, Robert Stack. I mean, they don't drink shot glasses of whiskey. They drink like highball glasses of whiskey. Yeah. And they're carrying them around constantly. Both he and Dorothy Malone's character are, very, aptly portrayed as alcoholics. I buy Malone a lot more than I buy Stack as the alcoholic. Stack is definitely kind of like he's playing it up just a little bit too much. He's kind of doing it's much more mannered. Whereas I think Malone is kind of at least sort of like inhabiting it and having a a lot more fun with it.
Yeah, no.
But she also kind of gets to be the femme fatale in this. Right. So there's a, you kind of get, Robert Stack kind of has to be the straight man, and he kind of has to be the thing that's driving the plot forward as well. So, I mean, it is a difficult role, but I don't think he's quite up to it. But I think everybody else is excellent.
There are times where Stack goes a little over the top, where he's over the top for this film.
right. Where is really over the top, by the way. I mean,
where he's like literally hugging the bottles of corn liquor that he buys because he prefers that. Is like, there's one point where the bartender is like, I don't even expect to see you here. I mean, you should be over at the high class bar buying like martinis and stuff. He's like, I prefer the corn liquor. It reminds me of my youth. And it's like, okay. He's only like 2 steps away from basically sticking his dick in the fucking bottle. And
oh, yeah, I know. I mean, I'm just kind of, again, you start doing the math. I mean, this was made in 56. So you think like, I mean, Prohibition ended in 33. He would have remembered being, kind of a teen, he would have remembered Prohibition. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of one of those like historical bits where you just kind of like my head swims just a little bit when you imagine that kind of like how old these films are and sort of the reality of it to some degree. And the fact that, Dorothy Malone literally died, 2 months ago, so. Yeah. I do love this film. I do actually prefer Five Guns West to this. Okay. Just as Five Guns West kind of came out of nowhere for me. I was really not expecting to hit that.
I can see that. Yeah.
But I think this is like excellently made. I mean, the Cirque is obviously one of the things that he's known for. I don't know how many of his films you've seen, or kind of what your
I don't know if I've knowingly seen any of his other stuff. Like I did very limited research. So.
Have you ever seen Far From Heaven? That's the Julianne Moore, Dennis Quaid movie where Julianne Moore falls in love with a black man, and
I've seen that.
That's an explicit Douglas Sirk homage. I mean, that's basically if Douglas Sirk was making movies in 2004.
I see that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And if you kind of watch the DVD extras on that, they talk about like how, Sirk is well known for doing, if you watch this film, there's a lot of like mirror shots where, Lauren Bacall is in kind of one corner of the frame, and then there's a mirror, and you can kind of see Rock Hudson in the mirror, and then they're looking at each other through that.
Right at the beginning of the film, like the first little part of the film where Robert Stack just sweeps Lauren Bacall off her feet and like, hey, let's go on this adventure. And they go to this motel, and he gets her this big lavish room. And while he's trying to woo her, Rock Hudson's like in the frame of the mirror. He's in the door frame, just sort of leaning there going like, oh, fuck, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, there's a ton of he loved kind of subdividing his frames, and he did a lot of kind of like static shots with that sort of thing, which we talk about David Lynch. David Lynch does that even more so, and does almost like tableau kind of shooting in something like Blue Velvet. Yeah. But with Cirque, it was still it wasn't quite as staged as that. I mean, it's just a different style. I'm not criticizing one or the other. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Cirque is definitely kind of doing that. I mean, if you watch this film, you can see there are a ton of, even like the beads in the bar, that kind of separate the different areas. Mm-hmm. And you kind of see there's moments where they'll kind of walk through those. Even the way there's a nude scene, quote unquote, which isn't really a nude scene, but Dorothy Malone's like robe ends up kind of serving that purpose in kind of a pivotal sequence. And so you look at the direction here. I mean, you could watch this on mute with no subtitles and get a whole lot out of it just based on the way it's shot. I mean, it's exquisitely directed, and that's just Douglas Sirk. He was a master, but he was a master in this kind of like weird way that just hasn't always. It's hard to kind of show this to somebody today and say like, no, like look at what he's doing. Look at how you kind of have to you have to be a film fan just a little bit to sort of get into Douglas Sirk. Yeah. Thank you, commenter on our for criticizing us for not being film fans. We're talking about Douglas Sirk here. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the funny thing here is before I saw this, and again the Lynch connection, I was just assuming when I was seeing Lynch's films that he was directly parodying just fucking soap operas. Like I thought he was just doing parodies of those. But now I look at this in a different light. No, he's aping Douglas Sirk, and this was before soap operas. This is what soap operas took from these films and just threw away anything interesting and just made these shitty.
Well, there's a bit of a feedback loop, right? Because soap opera was a format that was invented to sell soap on the radio during the Depression, right? And then some of the earliest like TV shows, I mean, there were like radio serials, and some of the earliest TV shows were soap operas. And in fact, Dorothy Malone, after this, kind of as she gets a little bit older, and
I think she was in Guiding Light or something.
She's on Peyton Place, which is a primetime soap
okay.
starting in the early '60s. I mean, literally starting with black and white TV. Her later career, like a lot of her later credits, are like Return to Peyton Place in like 1982 or whatever. So she did some like made for TV movies. I really love her just because she did seem to kind of go back and forth between TV and film a lot, and she never seems to have she's doing Roger Corman movies like right the year before she wins an Oscar for this, and you just have to think like, she slumming it with Roger Corman, but hey, doing what you had to do to make work.
She was quintessential like workman actor, like she was doing whatever she had to do to keep in the fucking keep working.
And to be amazing. And oh my god, can we talk about Dorothy Malone in this?
She is so good in this.
Please talk about how amazing she is in this. Why don't you tell me how amazing?
Oh, man, as sexy as you can fucking be in 1956 is what Dorothy Malone is in this film.
It's worth noting just before we even talk about that this film would have been considered incredibly racy for 1956.
Yes.
Disgustingly racy for 1956. That's a lot of the way that the film was kind of sold, and a lot of the way that basically cinema. I mean, they started to relax the Hays Code so that films could compete with TV again. Because TV was like domestic and at the home or whatever. If you want to entice people to come to the theater, you do two things: you widen the screen because nobody's ever going to have a widescreen TV, and you start having people sleep with each other.
Yeah,
because you can't do that in prime time. And this film plays with that. Like it could not have been made at any other time because it plays so well with that balance between what you can and can't kind of do on screen. And this pushes about as far as it can. And Dorothy Malone is the perfect like little moment for that. And with that said, now you tell me how brilliant Dorothy Malone is.
She is so many things at the same time. She is sexier and more of a sex symbol than Marilyn Monroe could ever hope to be in this film. She skirts the edges of dangerous and sexy and pathetic, and at the same time, just her body language and her actual performance, everything combined together is so immaculate. Like there's no false notes with her at all in this entire film. She, of course, she's stunningly beautiful.
It's a really difficult role. It's a really challenging role tonally to sort of like pick up, and yet, I criticize Robert Stack perhaps a little bit unfairly. I mean, he's got a hard thing to do here as well. I mean, he's got an incredibly difficult thing to do. Dorothy Malone is doing something almost as difficult, and you never see her sweat at all in this film.
No, she's doing this very broad, big character, but at the same time, she still brings the emotional depth to it. Like she's still, you can see the insecurities in her character. You can see the underneath the facade that she puts on all the time. And
she's funny. I mean, the moment when she's got the picnic basket, like the case, and she sits in the car and she's like, are you ready for lunch? Where do you want to go? I've got an idea. I mean, there's this. You just watch her in that scene, and she there's this fire behind her eyes, and there's this scheming intelligence, and also just this like completely kind of adorable nature. And she as an actress is doing 3 or 4 things at the same time, and the character is doing kind of 3 or 4 things at the same time. And you just watch her, and yet I just want to laugh at like her body language, where she's just so overtly trying to hit on this guy, and
the way she flirts with the guy at the gas station.
Oh God! That's also another like brilliant bit of Douglas Sirk direction, because that's all one shot. That's amazing too. But, her performance in that, like you just watch like the way her eyes flutter just a little bit. And,
I love it because she's like so. He's like, I close up in an hour. When do you make half an hour? And then
he says half an hour, and she says, "How about earlier?" Like.
Or whatever, and then
like go lock up now. I love that they recognize each other. I think that's my favorite bit in that scene where she's like, "Oh, aren't you so and he played football or whatever?" And he's like,
you didn't see me. You recognize me out of my shoulder pads or whatever, right. Yeah.
Which is a really deft bit of writing, because you like, oh, I get kind of what you're saying now, and obviously this is a guy literally working at a filling station, and this is, basically like Paris Hilton or whatever, And he's like, well, I know you. And it's like, oh, well, we know each other. Let's go fuck. It's so, I mean, it's just great. It's just,
and the look at her face after he says that. And it's the 1956 version of, yes, I'm going to get laid tonight.
Yeah. It's such a great scene. It's such a great performance. There is this sort of thing where, I watched this twice, and the first time I watched it, I, just kind of watched it a little bit casually without subtitles or anything, and just sort of, just kind of absorbed with the film. I was kind of getting, I don't want to say bored, but I was definitely kind of getting the like, all right, this is kind of 50s melodrama, kind of, it's kind of doing the thing it's doing. And then Malone shows up. And suddenly the film just like bursts to life. I mean, there really is, there's this fire that's just kind of following her around the whole time.
I can see that, because like you start off, it's Rock Hudson, it's Lauren Bacall. You're like, okay, I know what's going to happen.
We've gotten this far in this film without even mentioning that Lauren Bacall is amazing in it. But yes,
she is also super amazing. But Dorothy Malone's so fucking good that she overshadows Lauren fucking Bacall.
Which, I mean, ironically, she also kind of does in The Big Sleep. It's just she's only in 2 minutes of The Big Sleep.
Yeah, that's so weird.
That says something about, like, I mean, Lauren Bacall is amazing. I mean, particularly in The Big Sleep. I mean, there's no question that Lauren Bacall, like, there's a reason she became a star for 50 years, And then you watch this, and I mean, Lauren Bacall is fine, and she's got a really difficult role, but it's not a showy role. And I think that was one of the things where Lauren Bacall was aging. She was in her like mid-30s by this point, so she was like an old hag, at this point, for Hollywood standards. But no, she was, and I think there is this sort of sense of, this part was maybe not like kind of the leading lady kind of role that kind of really would keep her going.
Apparently Bogart didn't like this film or her in it.
Yeah. No, it's. I think she's good in it. I think she does. She's not doing the showy things. She's doing
she's the straightest one in the entire film. Like her and Rock Hudson are. They're almost like in a different universe compared to everybody else in this film, right? Bacall has to be a woman who has a miscarriage in a film in 1956.
Right, which is, that's just kind of crazy. No, I was going to say the thing that you really kind of land on is that the sort of the family relationship between the Hadleys. I mean, this sort of Hadley Oil Company. And then, you kind of get Dorothy Malone's character and you get Robert Stack's character, who are, I mean, again, it's hard. I keep coming back to The Big Sleep on this because it is kind of, if you imagine like the tycoon in The Big Sleep, he's got the two daughters who are kind of like they're sowing their oats sort of thing. And I mean, it is sort of this, slightly, I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but it's also, that's kind of what was going on. I mean, this is just kind of what, I use Paris Hilton as an example for a reason, right?
It's the same idea, but here in this case, it's with this and The Big Sleep, it's the sort of monkey shines of the kids that are like actively affecting the health of the patriarch of the fucking family, whereas, in real life, Paris Hilton, every dumb fucking thing she does, her fucking parents don't care about her. Like, it seems pretty obvious.
It really in real life, it's Eric and Don Jr. are the siblings who are kind of just go kill some big game and everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
God, I mean, it's such a kind of fascinating film. It's such a great. I mean, Dorothy again. Malone is so great. It's hard for me to think about anything else about this film. Always nice to see a geologist on screen. You don't get to see nearly enough heroic geologists in cinema. I think we should definitely kind of play that up. I don't know. It's kind of hard to see this film. There's a Criterion edition. I don't know if there's probably some good special features there.
You can find it Criterion 2001, and then I'm pretty sure it's probably streaming on Amazon too. I didn't check that, but I imagine it is. And I mean, with the previous two films, the Corman ones as well, I should mention Corman just recently sold all of his fucking films to Shout Factory. he had a previous deal with Show Factory with some of his titles that were released back in like 2010 or whatever. But now he just did a deal basically like Corman's in his 80s. Like he doesn't have that much longer to
Corman's
live.
in his 90s now. I
Is
looked
he in
him
his
up.
90s?
He's like 91
okay.
or something. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Shit. Well, there you go. He has even less than I thought to live probably. So
he still has the same amount to live. He just started earlier than you thought.
Yeah. But he just sold all of his titles, and apparently his kids are suing him now because they feel sort of gypped. But he just sold all of his the rights to his titles to Show Factory, and you're probably going to see a lot of this shit come back out on DVD and Blu-ray at this point.
It would be really nice to see a restored, really good version of Five Guns West. I think some of these definitely need to be rediscovered, and I definitely want to do some more Roger Corman films and some more Douglas Sirk films and some more Dorothy Malone as well. There's I'm picking up Girlfriends in the process of doing this podcast, and he actually did a film noir with Linda Darnell in 1944 called Summer Storm. So that's one that we just need to.
We're going to do that.
We're going to put that on the list, sight unseen, right? I couldn't find it. It wasn't on YouTube, or I was literally going to watch it this afternoon, and then I couldn't find it on YouTube. So damn it. We're wrapping up because I do have so I'm going to surprise you with something.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll wrap this up. I love this film. This is my favorite of the three.
Please. I mean, we can keep talking. I'm just saying. I got a little segment we're gonna do before you get into the DVD info. So
okay, well, we did the DVD info, so we're already
okay. Well, we're good. All right.
But I will mention one trivia thing here. Douglas Sirk wanted it to be stated that Kyle Hadley was gay in the film. However, this could not be mentioned directly due to the Hays Code. Right. Nevertheless, it was still implied that Hadley is secretly in love with Mitch Wayne, which is ironic considering Rock Hudson was gay.
Right. I mean, it is one of those things where, particularly when Dorothy Malone is literally you can practically see her pressing herself into his dick.
Yeah, and it is like, how are you resisting
he's
this?
Just kind of very straight laced, hard shoulders.
I mean, there's such thing as being a good guy and respecting your friend, and then there's Dorothy Malone rubbing her tits up against your dick. Okay, dude.
Dorothy Malone in that sequence, and if you go to YouTube and you just search Dorothy Malone, and I think you have to search this movie or whatever, but you'll find like a little 2-minute clip that's that scene, and watch that scene. It's it's worth it. Trust me. You definitely kind of get that. Yeah, Rock Hudson, a gay man. I can understand how he was able to resist that a little bit more than some of the rest of us. But it would be another kind of angle on this to kind of say, and this kind of goes into what I was going to do here actually, which I was going to ask you. We haven't played a game in a while, and I'm glad you love this film because we're going to play a little game. All right.
Okay.
We're going to play Remake This. Remember when we used to play Remake This? We did it a couple of times way back at the beginning. And so the way we play this game is I challenge you to remake Written on the Wind. You are a producer, right? So I come to you. I'm a studio head. I've got $50 million. I'm going to give to you to remake Written on the Wind. Okay. What I want from you is a director, a star or stars, who you're going to put in it, and a sort of concept. What's your concept for how to remake this movie?
Okay, so first thing, concept, I can't do this as a parody of melodramas. I have to make it more straight-laced, so it's probably going to be a very depressing film.
Are you going to do it period?
I'm not going to do it period. I'm probably going to modernize it. I'm almost tempted to make it in the 80s and make it period in the 80s, just because it informed so many films in the 80s, right?
I'm feeling it.
Okay, so shit. Okay, so first off, director for this.
Yeah. If you don't have like a name director, I mean, I kind of get that, but like just sort of concept. I'm just kind of going like, what's your idea?
Here's the thing. This film has such great dialogue and it pops off. I almost want, and I think this is a weird choice, but at the same time, I think it's kind of a smart choice. I almost want David Mamet to direct this and to rewrite the script.
He would David Mamet would definitely not turn in the version that Douglas Sirk did.
No.
We can leave it at that. But yeah, I could see that.
Okay.
Now, who are you going to cast?
Okay, so Mitch Wayne, Rock Hudson's character. Who's that guy from Mad Men?
If you hadn't asked me, I would have been able to tell you.
The big star in Mad Men.
We'll get there. Go ahead.
Okay.
Who else?
Okay, Lauren Bacall's character.
Yep.
I would. Oh man, this might still work. She's getting a little older.
Mm-hmm.
I would go Julianne Moore.
I get that.
She just strikes me as that sort of classical actress kind of
John
thing.
Hamm. John Hamm.
John Hamm is the Mitch Wayne character. The Robert Stack character. Thinking age range. Oh man, I almost have a really dumb answer for this that I would like to see.
Go with the dumb answer.
I'd like to see just because I think it would be a train wreck. Tom Cruise. I would like to see him play a drunk playboy who throws his money around, and
I want to see. Basically, he would be. Remember that scene in A Few Good Men where he gets like super wasted?
Yeah,
and it'd be that scene, but he's now like 55.
Yeah,
for an entire movie. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Okay.
Yeah. So like the way I'm casting this, you got to kind of like. Okay, so it's not quite as young as these people are in the film. It's a little bit older, but and the Dorothy Malone. Oh man, who would I put with Dorothy Malone? Oh, maybe that would work. But should I bow to my fetish and have two redheads in the same film?
You're the producer, man. Go full Harvey Weinstein. Don't go full Harvey Weinstein. But...
No. Yeah, that's not exactly the right name to throw in there. No. Actually, you know what? I want to change. I want to switch the roles.
Okay.
I want Julianne Moore in the Dorothy Malone role.
Okay.
I want Jessica Chastain in the Lauren Bacall role.
Sure.
That's what I want to go for.
I could go with that.
I could maybe actually just assume that this film was made in like 2000 instead.
Yeah, no. I mean, I feel like we can kind of play a little bit fast and loose with like
although how old is Jessica Chastain anyway? She's like
we'll look up
40 maybe.
I'm surprised. I mean, I get your version of this. I'm totally on board with it. Jessica Chastain is like 40, just turned 41.
Okay. So assume Jessica Chastain was 41 in 2000, and then you have Julianne Moore. You have everybody in place. The guy Edward Platt who plays the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have to recast him. So I would use what's his face from Fargo? Jesus, his name totally escapes me.
William H. Macy.
He would be the doctor in this one.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think that kind of.
I feel, but yeah, no, I like your version of the movie. I thought a little bit about this too. I'm not gonna, I didn't put myself on the spot, so I can do this quickly. We'll kind of wrap it up here.
Mm-hmm.
My version, I'd do it more modern day. I do it, 2018, like present day.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of it being an oil company, like it would be like a tech company, like Silicon Valley,
right?
And advertising, it should be like some marketing person. I didn't really recast Lauren Bacall role, but you were kind of mentioning a madman, made me think of like Christina Hendricks, who I think would kind of do that pretty well. The one reason I have the perfect one for Dorothy Malone's character, and that is Margot Robbie.
Oh, okay.
I think she could play that to a fucking T, and I'm kind of in love with Margot Robbie these days. For the pair, for the kind of star-crossed lovers, as we say, by which I mean Mitch and what is it? Mitch and Kyle. Mitch and Kyle there. It was purely during the fight sequences at the end. I just had this like mental image that I had to share with you. And I'm going to bring back the duo. I'm going to bring back Edward Norton and Brad Pitt.
Oh, You know, and
That's
I almost picked Brad Pitt for the Kyle role. It was in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, well, I do Brad Pitt
You'd
as
reverse
Mitch.
it, though.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
like, because he's kind of the bigger guy, you know, right?
Mhm.
And then Edward Norton is sort of like the alcoholic, because I could see Edward Norton totally doing the, you know, like, I'm just drunk all the time.
Oh, whoa, wait, what about Rounders with Edward Norton and
and Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
That was, you know, if we can't get Brad Pitt, I'm sure we could get
Matt Damon.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hey, let's do Matt Damon and Ben Affleck as long as we're dreaming, right? You know, like
that works too. I mean,
I can see that too.
I can
Except
see.
I don't think Margot Robbie would fuck either one of those guys. So you know, it's kind of hard to.
But you know, Matt Damon playing a rich dickhead. I mean, that's believable
I mean,
as shit.
I mean, any Hollywood star playing a rich dickhead, I can sort of believe, you know.
Mm-hmm.
See, it's Tobey Maguire in here, but yeah, no, that's my version. That's my version. I don't know who we get to direct it. You know, whatever.
Yeah, it's like honestly, I wasn't thinking too hard on directing there. Like on the spot, I was just thinking, what's the first thing I think about when is as far as this goes, is like directorial dialogue. And I mean, if Mamet's going to direct it, he's going to rewrite it. It's just kind of a given. So
I kind of don't want to see the Mamet script. I want Mamet to direct somebody else's script if we're going to get, you know, if we're going to get Mamet to direct it. I think he would ruin this material, quite honestly, if you asked him to direct it, because he's this, you know, disgustingly right wing guy now. It would be really terrible. But actually, you know what I would give man. I really want a woman to direct this. I want, like, you mentioned the 80s. I want, like, Mary Herron, who directed American Psycho.
Okay.
I can see her kind of doing a really solid job of this.
Yeah. So you're not into the idea of closers get coffee as well as Mary Lee Hadley's vagina.
Well, you know, I mean, if you want to write an Alec Baldwin as the patriarch, I think we could probably
that
sell
works
that too. You know,
that works. You know,
no, I want to see. Let's see, Michael Douglas. Michael Douglas is that.
Michael
guy.
Douglas would get, you either use Michael Douglas or you use Alec Baldwin doing his SNL Trump impersonation.
Yeah.
Both kind of work.
I'm seeing Michael Douglas like literally doing like the Gordon Gekko, but like decrepit. You know,
shit.
Sort of thing. You know? Like where he's still kind of wearing those 80s ties and like but you know, he's surrounded by like these like 20 somethings who are all like working for this like Silicon Valley BuzzFeed like, you know, firm.
And he really listens to Huey Lewis and the News a lot. Like he's just that annoying.
Actually, I will mention I did see The Circle since the last time we talked about, and that's the movie from I think like last year, which has got Emma Watson, and it's based on a David Eggers novel, which I haven't read because it's fucking David Eggers. But it's basically about like Facebook, Google, like trying to control the world. Sort of, it's not a very good movie, but Tom Hanks plays like the CEO of the tech company guy. He basically is playing Steve Jobs in the film. And he does a pretty good job. You can sort of see him as that character, but he's so avuncular. I kind of like the idea of like the stick in the mud CEO who's like kind of the owner, who then is like surrounded by like these young people who are doing all the like J.K. Simmons in Spider-Man, you know, sort of, you know. Parker, bring me the photos. Yeah, we've kind of gone off track here, but
but no, that was fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a good thing, you know.
Yeah, so we're definitely gonna get in some more Dorothy Malone here at some point in the future, but
and probably some more Roger Corman.
You
know, it'd be fun to do some Roger Corman.
Yeah, totally agree. But until then, Daniel, tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
I am on Twitter at Daniel E. Harper. I do have a Patreon. It's at patreon.com/Daniel Harper. If you want to go give me a buck every month or so, I'd appreciate it. And that's probably the best. Oh, I have all my other podcasts. Wrong with Authority is the other big one. That's movies about history and the history they're about. And we do a kind of sub-thread on that because we can never just stick to a topic. But we do a sub-thread that's movies made or released during the presidency of Ronald Reagan. We do have an episode coming up whenever somebody manages to edit it, which hasn't happened because I haven't gotten my my thread onto the chat yet, so somebody can edit it. But we have a Raiders of the Lost Ark episode coming up pretty soon.
Nice.
We've already recorded, which was fun times, and I expect it will be a fun listen, although it's mostly us just kind of giggling. So
right on. Of course, you can find us at tmbdos.podbean.com, where you can find our Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Facebook links. Join our Facebook group. Best way to get in contact with us and let us know what's going on, and you find out what's going on with this podcast. We don't quite know what's going on with this podcast in the immediate future.
I have no idea.
Because next weekend I have to work, so we're going to be off again for a little bit. But
if we want to just move into sex comedies, Dorothy Malone was in the very first Beach Party movie.
Oh, that's right, wasn't she? Yeah, the Frankie Avalon. Yeah.
It was on Daily Motion. I watched a little bit of it just to get to the Dorothy Malone bit, and she's lovely.
Okay, that sounds like a good start. All right. We're going
comedies.
back. I want to go back to sex comedies anyway. So shit.
Done. We will Beach Party and something else, maybe joysticks.
Yeah, we'll be doing some stuff with tits as well. So
yeah, there will be some nudity coming up.
Yeah. But until then, Daniel, it was a pleasure, and thank you everyone for listening. And
R.I.P. Dorothy Malone.
Yeah. Rest in peace. Great actress. So. We'll be back when we're back. Thank you guys and goodbye.
Cheers.
A faithless lover's kiss is written on the wind, a night of stolen bliss is written on the wind, just like the dying leaves, our dreams we've calmly thrown away, now they've blown away, softly flown away, the promises we made are whispers in the breeze, they echo and they fade, just like our memories, though you are gone from me, we never can really be apart. What's written on the wind is written in my heart. It's written on the wind. It is written on the wind. Though you are gone from me, we never can really be apart. What's written on the wind is written in my heart, is written in my heart.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For more episodes, links to our Apple Podcast site, YouTube, and our Facebook group, as well as other websites and podcasts of similar interests, please visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you, drive through, filthy